The Great Hall of Prime was the most beautiful place in the known galaxy. Crystal towers rose toward a perfect purple sky. Gardens floated on platforms of light. The air smelled sweet like flowers that never died. Everything here was safe. Everything was controlled. Nothing bad ever happened on Prime. Ambassador Trill stood at the entrance of the Agricultural Council building. Her translucent skin glowed softly in the morning light. She had served as the welcome ambassador for 40 cycles now. She had greeted farmers from 47 different species. She had seen the best crops in the galaxy pass through these doors. But today she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt worried. The humans were coming. Trill looked at her data tablet again. Earth. Classification. Category 7. The words made her stomach turn. She had read the reports about Earth many times. The planet had extreme temperature changes. It had violent storms. It had earthquakes that split the ground open. It had volcanoes that covered entire regions in fire and ash. The very air was filled with dangerous radiation from its sun. And somehow, impossibly, humans farmed there. The transport ship landed softly on the crystal platform. The door opened, and Trill forced herself to smile. She was a professional. She would treat these humans with the same respect she gave everyone else. 3 figures stepped out into the light. The first was a woman in her middle years. She had black hair tied back in a simple style. Her skin was tan from working under a deadly sun. She wore plain clothes that looked like they had seen many seasons of work. Her name, according to the records, was Park. She was an agricultural scientist. Behind her came a younger man with a friendly face. This was Park, her brother. He studied crop genetics. He carried a large case that Trill assumed held plant samples. The last was an older man with white hair and deep lines on his face. His hands were rough and strong. His eyes were sharp and bright with good humor, had been farming for over 50 years. He was what humans called a master farmer. Stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Ambassador Trill, thank you for welcoming us. We are honored to be here." Trill returned the bow. "The honor is ours, though I must admit we were surprised by Earth's application. The Golden Harvest competition has very high standards. Most species prepare for centuries before entering." "We have been preparing," said. "My family has farmed the same land for 7 generations. We thought it was time to share what we have learned." Trill did not know what to say. 7 generations on a. The very idea made her feel sick. She led them through the great hall. Other delegates stopped and stared. The collective elegant with shimmering wings watched from their private balcony. The water farmers whispered among themselves. Even the quiet, fungal beings who rarely showed emotion seemed curious about the newcomers. The humans walked calmly through all of this. They did not seem nervous. They did not seem impressed. They looked around with polite interest, as if visiting a neighbor's garden. First Cultivator floated down from the balcony. She was magnificent, 6 limbs, compound eyes that sparkled like gems, wings that caught the light in 1,000 colors. She had won the Golden Harvest for 200 consecutive cycles. No one had ever come close to defeating her. "So these are the farmers," said. Her voice was like music, but cold music. "How fascinating. Tell me, do you actually grow your food in dirt, in actual soil?" "Yes," answered. His voice was rough but kind. "The soil on island is volcanic, very rich, very good for growing." Wings flickered. "Volcanic? You mean soil that was once molten rock, expelled from the planetary crust during geological catastrophes?" "Yes, makes excellent tangerines." Several delegates nearby made sounds of distress. Trill quickly stepped in. "Perhaps we should continue to the registration area. There is much to do before the competition begins." As they walked, fell into step beside Trill. "Forgive me, Ambassador, I don't mean to be rude, but why does everyone seem so uncomfortable around us?" Trill considered lying. She considered being diplomatic. but something about the young man's honest face made her tell the truth. "Your planet terrifies us," she said quietly. "We have studied Earth. We know what happens there. Your world is trying to kill you constantly. Storms, earthquakes, extreme temperatures, radiation from your sun. And yet you not only survive, you farm. You grow food in conditions that would destroy any other species." Smiled, "Earth is our home. It is not trying to kill us. It is just active. We have learned to work with it." "Work with it," Trill repeated. "You work with earthquakes, you work with typhoons." "Typhoons are difficult," admitted. "But they bring rain. The rain feeds the crops. Everything is connected." They reached the registration area, signed the official documents while examined the facility with a farmer's careful eye. A council official approached them. "We have assigned you a demonstration plot. I'm afraid it's not our best location. There were limited options available." Looked at the map he provided. The plot was on a rocky hillside at the edge of the exhibition grounds. Other species had rejected it because the terrain was too difficult. "This is perfect," she said. The official blinked. "I'm sorry." "Rocky hillside, good drainage, southern exposure for maximum sunlight. This is perfect, thank you." She sounded like she meant it. Later that evening, Trill watched the humans set up their camp near their assigned plot. They had brought simple tools, things that looked ancient compared to the gravity manipulators and molecular assemblers other species used. Shovels, rakes, something called a hoe. First cultivator appeared beside her. "They have no chance, you know. This competition requires precision, control, perfection. Those primitives with their dirt and their hand tools cannot possibly compete with the collective." "Perhaps," Trill said. But she watched as knelt down and touched the soil with his bare hands. He rubbed it between his fingers, he smelled it, he tasted it, and he smiled. It was the smile of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. The smile of someone who knew something no one else knew. Trill had lived her entire life on perfect, safe worlds. She had never struggled against nature. She had never had to fight for her food. Looking at that old farmer kneeling in the dirt, she wondered if that was a weakness she had never considered. The competition would begin tomorrow, and for the first time in 200 cycles, Trill was not certain who would win. The sun rose over Prime, painting the sky in soft shades of gold and pink. Delegates from across the galaxy gathered at their assigned plots, ready to begin the 3-week growing period that would determine the winner of the Golden Harvest Award. The collective activated their climate-controlled greenhouse. Inside, the temperature was exactly 22.3 degrees. The humidity was precisely 67%. Automated systems monitored every molecule of air. Nothing was left to chance. Nothing was imperfect. They deployed their hydroponic towers, tall structures that grew plants in nutrient-rich water, never touching soil. Their crops floated in perfect rows, fed by computers that calculated exactly how much food each plant needed. The fungal beings from a world of eternal darkness constructed their lightless cultivation chambers. Inside, specialized moss grew in carefully measured shadows. And on the rocky hillside at the edge of the grounds, the humans began to dig. Stood at the top of the slope looking down at the terrain. Other species had rejected this plot because it was too steep, too rocky, too difficult. But she saw something different. She saw home. "Grandfather used to tell me about the old terraces on," she said to her brother. "The ones our ancestors built hundreds of years ago. They carved farms into mountains. They made the impossible possible." Nodded, "Let's do it again." They worked through the entire first day. Directed the operation, his old hands never stopping. He showed them how to read the slope of the land. He showed them where water would naturally flow. He showed them which rocks to keep and which to remove. By sunset, the first terrace was taking shape. Other delegates stopped to watch. They had never seen anything like this. The humans were reshaping the land itself, using nothing but simple tools and their own strength. It seemed primitive. It seemed barbaric. It seemed impossible. Delegate was particularly fascinated. He approached the human plot on the second day, his fungal body moving slowly in the bright sunlight. "I do not wish to disturb you," he said. His voice was soft and careful. "But I have questions, many questions." Wipe the sweat from her forehead. "Of course, please ask." "You work under direct sunlight. Does this not harm you?" "The sun gives us energy. It helps our crops grow. Yes, too much can burn our skin, but we protect ourselves." Was silent for a long moment. "On my world, direct light is fatal. We live in caves, in darkness. Your sun would kill me in minutes." "Then you are very brave to be standing here now," said. "The light here on Prime is filtered, safe, but still I find it uncomfortable." Moved closer, studying the soil. "You grow things in this dirt. How do you know what nutrients are present? How do you control the chemical balance?" Laughed. It was a warm, friendly sound. "Control? We do not control, we learn, we adapt. We work with what the earth gives us." He picked up a handful of soil and held it out. "Smell this. What do you notice?" Leaned forward carefully. "It smells alive, rich, complex." Good soil is alive. Billions of tiny creatures live in every handful. Bacteria, fungi, worms, they all work together. They break down dead plants. They make nutrients. They create life from death. Let the soil fall through his fingers. "My job is not to control them. My job is to help them. I feed the soil and the soil feeds my plants." Stood very still. This is remarkable. On my world we control every variable. We eliminate all unknown factors, but you embrace the unknown. You trust the chaos." "Not chaos," said. "Partnership." By the end of the first week, the human plot had transformed. 3 terraces carved into the hillside, held in place by carefully stacked rocks. Small channels directed water from the top to the bottom, ensuring every level received moisture. Different crops grew on each terrace. Rice on the lowest level where water collected, vegetables in the middle, hardy grains at the top where the sun was strongest. First cultivator came to inspect her competition. She walked along the edge of the human plot, her compound eyes taking in every detail. Her wings were folded tight against her back. "Interesting," she said finally. "Primitive but interesting. Tell me, what do you do when conditions change? When the temperature shifts? When the humidity rises or falls?" "We adapt," answered. "Adapt how? Where are your environmental controls, your atmospheric processors, your backup systems?" Stepped forward. He was holding a small plant in a pot, a rice seedling barely a week old. "This is our backup system. This plant is descended from rice that has grown on Earth for 10,000 years. It has survived ice ages, droughts, floods. It has changed itself generation after generation to survive whatever the world throws at it." He held the plant up to the light. "Every seed we plant carries 10,000 years of adaptation, 10,000 years of learning, 10,000 years of survival. That is our backup system." Wings flickered. "Seeds cannot think, seeds cannot plan, seeds are just genetic material." "Yes," agreed. "And genetic material is the most powerful technology in the universe. It learns from every success and every failure. It passes that knowledge to the next generation. No computer can match it. No machine can replace it." Turned and walked away without another word. That night sat on the highest terrace, looking up at the stars. Her brother sat beside her. "Do you think we can win?" asked. "I do not know. They have incredible technology. They have perfected hydroponics. Everyone here has advantages we do not have." "Then what do we have?" Smiled. "We have 7 generations of stubbornness. We have a grandmother who rebuilt her farm 6 times after 6 different typhoons. We have a grandfather who grew tangerines in volcanic ash when everyone said it was impossible." She looked at her brother. "We have everything we need." Below them, the terraces held firm against the hillside. The crops were growing strong, and somewhere in the soil, billions of tiny organisms were doing what they had always done, creating life from death, turning rock into food, making the impossible possible. The competition was only beginning, but the humans were exactly where they belonged. The warning came at midnight on the 15th day of the competition. Ambassador Trill was pulled from her sleep by urgent alarms. She rushed to the council chamber, where frightened officials were gathered around a massive display screen. The image showed a swirling mass of energy moving toward Prime, an ion storm of enormous power. "This is impossible," said the chief meteorologist, a scientist whose skin had turned pale gray with fear. "Prime has not experienced a significant weather event in over 3,000 cycles. Our atmospheric controls prevent all natural disturbances." "The storm originated outside our control zone," another official explained. "It gathered strength in deep space. By the time we detected it, it was already too powerful to redirect." Trill felt cold terror in her chest. How bad will it be? "Our models predict sustained winds of approximately 40 kilometers per hour, precipitation levels of 2 centimeters, possible electrical discharge." To species that had lived their entire existence in perfect, controlled environments, this was catastrophic. To species that had never experienced real weather, this was the end of the world. "We must evacuate the exhibition grounds," Trill declared. "All delegates must seek shelter immediately." The order went out across Prime. Delegates abandoned their crops and fled for safety. They sealed their greenhouses and activated emergency protocols. They shut down their hydroponic towers, hopping to protect the delicate systems from power surges. They retreated deep into their lightless chambers. Within an hour, the exhibition grounds were empty. Almost empty. The storm hit at dawn. Wind swept across the crystal plains of Prime, carrying rain that fell in heavy sheets. Lightning cracked across the sky. Thunder rolled like the voice of an angry god. From the safety of the observation tower, Trill watched the destruction unfold. The greenhouses, those perfect structures of glass and light, shattered under the wind. Climate control systems failed. Crops that had never known temperature change suddenly experienced cold. They died within minutes. The hydroponic towers swayed and collapsed. Nutrient solutions spilled across the ground. Root systems, designed for water not soil, withered and blackened. Even the suffered. Water seeped into their lightless chambers. Their carefully cultivated moss, which had never known moisture from the sky, began to rot. Everywhere Trill looked, she saw disaster. The greatest agricultural exhibition in galactic history was being destroyed by what humans would consider mild spring weather. And then she saw something that made her heart stop. 3 figures were moving on the rocky hillside at the edge of the grounds. 3 humans working in the rain. "They are insane," whispered a delegate beside her. "The storm will kill them." But it did not kill them. Trill watched in disbelief as the humans worked through the wind and rain as if it were nothing, was staking down plants, driving wooden supports deep into the soil, was wrapping vulnerable seedlings in protective covers, was digging channels to direct water away from the terraces. They were not hiding from the storm, they were farming through it. The storm lasted 6 hours. When it finally passed, Prime looked like a battlefield. Broken glass everywhere, collapsed structures, dead crops scattered across the ground. The sweet smell of the paradise world had been replaced by the sharp scent of ozone and wet earth. Trill and the other officials ventured out to assess the damage. It was worse than they had feared. 90% of the competition entries were destroyed or damaged beyond recovery. 200 cycles of agricultural dominance had ended in a single morning. They found the humans already replanting. "Good morning, Ambassador," said cheerfully. She was covered in mud. Her clothes were soaked. She looked exhausted but strangely happy. Quite a bit of excitement last night. Trill could not speak for a moment. She looked at the human plot. Yes, there was damage. Some plants had been uprooted, some seedlings had been crushed, but the terraces themselves had held. The drainage channels had worked perfectly. Most of the crops were still standing. How, Trill finally managed. How did you survive? Walked over carrying a bundle of damaged plants. He was going to compost them, Trill realized. He was going to turn death back into life. This was a small storm, the old farmer said. On Earth, we call this a spring shower. It brings water to the fields. It clears away weak plants so strong ones can grow. Storms are not disasters. Storms are teachers. But your crops, you lost plants. Maybe 15%. The experimental varieties mostly wanted to test how they would handle stress anyway. Now we know, smiled. The rice is fine. Rice has survived worse. First cultivator emerged from her ruined greenhouse. Her magnificent wings were drooping. Her compound eyes had lost their sparkle. She had never experienced failure before. She did not know how to process it. She walked slowly toward the human plot. She stared at the terraces, at the crops still growing strong, at the humans working calmly in the mud. How, she asked. Her voice was quiet now. All the coldness was gone. How did you do this? Stopped working and looked at the alien. For the first time, she felt no competition between them. She felt only sadness for someone who had never learned what it meant to struggle. On Earth we have a saying, said, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. We do not fear storms. We do not fear failure, we expect them. We prepare for them. And when they come, we stand up and keep going. Looked at the destroyed exhibition grounds. We built perfect systems. We eliminated all variables. We controlled everything, and it was not enough. Control is an illusion, said gently. The universe does not obey our plans. The only true strength is the ability to adapt, to change, to grow. He offered the alien a handful of seeds. These are rice seeds. They come from plants that have survived 10,000 years of storms. Plant them in soil. Let them feel the sun. Let them drink the rain. They will teach you what we have learned. Took the seeds carefully. She held them as if they were the most precious things in the universe. Perhaps they were. By evening, the human plot was fully restored. New seedlings replaced the damaged ones. The terraces were reinforced. Life continued just as it always had, just as it always would. And across the exhibition grounds, other delegates watched with new eyes. They had seen the impossible. They had seen farmers who did not fear the storm. They had seen what it truly meant to be human. The great hall of the Agricultural Council had never been so quiet. Hundreds of delegates sat in their assigned seats, waiting for the judgment that would determine the future of galactic farming. The air was heavy with tension and uncertainty. Ambassador Trill stood at the central podium. She looked tired. The past week had aged her in ways she had not thought possible. She had spent every day meeting with devastated delegates, cataloging losses, trying to find some path forward. The situation is unprecedented, she announced, her voice carrying across the silent hall. Of the 47 entries in this cycle's Golden Harvest competition, only 3 remain viable. All others have been disqualified due to total or near-total crop failure. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Trill raised her hand for silence. The 3 remaining entries are as follows. First, the delegation, which successfully preserved a small quantity of cave moss in containers provided by the human team. Second, the collective, which salvaged a partial harvest from a backup greenhouse that survived the storm. And third, the human delegation from Earth, which maintained the majority of their crops through the weather event. First cultivator rose from her seat. She had spent the days since the storm in isolation, trying to understand what had happened. She had failed. Now she was angry. I formally protest this result, she declared. The competition was compromised by extraordinary circumstances. The storm was a random event that could not have been predicted. It is unfair to judge our agricultural capabilities based on our response to chaos. The storm was random, Trill agreed. But so is nature. Is that not what agriculture is ultimately about? Growing food in an unpredictable universe. The collective has perfected controlled agriculture. We have eliminated uncertainty. We have created perfect growing conditions. Our methods have won the golden harvest for 200 consecutive cycles. And now you suggest that all of that means nothing because of one freak storm. I suggest, Trill said carefully, that the storm revealed something important about our definitions of agricultural excellence. Wings flared. The humans should be disqualified. They come from their methods are primitive. They use hand tools and animal waste. They grow things in dirt. This is not agriculture. This is barbarism. The hall erupted in debate. Some delegates agreed with. The humans were too different, too strange. Their methods were unsettling. They represented something that civilized species had moved beyond. But other delegates were not so sure. They had seen the humans work through the storm. They had seen the terraces hold when everything else collapsed. They had eaten vegetables grown in actual soil for the first time in their lives. They had tasted something they could not explain. Ambassador Trill raised her hand again. The human delegation has requested permission to address the council. I believe we should hear them. The hall fell silent once more. All eyes turned to the small group of humans sitting in the visitors' section. Stood slowly. She walked to the central podium, her footsteps echoing in the great space. She looked small, surrounded by alien delegates who towered over her. She looked calm. "Thank you, Ambassador," she said. "And thank you, First Cultivator, for your honest words. You are right about many things. We are primitive by your standards. We use simple tools. We work with our hands in the dirt. We embrace methods that you left behind long ago." She paused, looking around the hall. "But I want to tell you a story, a true story about my grandmother." The delegates leaned forward slightly. Stories were universal. "My grandmother was born on island, a small piece of land in the sea. The island is volcanic. The soil is made of rock and ash. The weather is violent. Typhoons hit every year, destroying everything in their path. By any reasonable measure, island should not be farmable. It should be abandoned. It should be classified as non-viable for agriculture." Smiled softly at the memory. "My grandmother did not care about reasonable measures. She grew tangerines on that volcanic rock. She built stone walls to protect her trees from the wind. Every year the typhoons came. Every year some trees were destroyed, and every year she planted new ones. In her lifetime she rebuilt her farm 6 times, 6 complete losses, 6 complete reconstructions. She never complained. She never gave up. She said that the typhoons made her trees stronger. She said that struggle was the price of sweetness." Reached into her bag and pulled out a small orange fruit. She held it up for the council to see. "This is a tangerine. It is descended from the trees my grandmother planted. It has survived more storms than I can count. It has grown in soil that scientists said was too poor, too rocky, too acidic. And yet here it is, sweet, alive, perfect." She set the tangerine on the podium. "This is what agriculture means. It does not mean we are better than you. It does not mean your methods are wrong. It means we have learned something that you have not had the chance to learn. We have learned that struggle creates strength, that adaptation creates resilience, that the worst conditions can produce the sweetest fruit." Stood and walked to join his sister. He was carrying a data tablet. "I am a geneticist," he said. "I have studied the crops of many worlds. I have analyzed the DNA of plants from across the galaxy, and I have found something interesting." He activated the tablet, projecting images into the air. "Most galactic crops are genetically stable. They have not changed significantly in thousands of years. They were bred for specific conditions, and those conditions have never changed. They are perfect for their environments, but they are fragile. They cannot adapt. They cannot evolve. He changed the image to show Earth crops. Human crops are different. Our genetic diversity is enormous. Our plants contain thousands of variants, thousands of adaptations, thousands of survival strategies. Because our world keeps changing, because our weather keeps challenging us, because we have never been able to create perfect conditions. He looked at First Cultivator. Your crops are like beautiful glass sculptures, perfect and delicate. Our crops are like old trees that have survived 100 storms, not perfect, not beautiful, but alive, and ready for whatever comes next. The hall was silent, stood slowly. The old farmer walked forward to join his companions. He did not have data or science. He had only his hands and his experience. I have been farming for 50 years, he said. I have lost crops to drought. I have lost crops to flood. I have lost crops to insects and disease and my own mistakes. Every loss taught me something. Every failure made me better. He looked around the hall. You are all afraid of loss. You have built systems to prevent it. You have created perfect worlds where nothing bad ever happens, but you have also created a cage. You have trapped yourselves in perfection, and when the storm came, you did not know what to do. He smiled gently. Come to Earth. Come to we will teach you what we have learned. We will show you how to fall down and stand up again. We will show you that the universe is not your enemy. It is your teacher. The vote was called. The council deliberated for 3 hours, and when the results were announced, history had changed forever. The Golden Harvest Award, for the first time in galactic history, went to a species. But that was not the true victory. The true victory came in the faces of the delegates who looked at the humans with new understanding, with respect, with hope. The universe had taught them a lesson, and they were finally ready to learn. The award ceremony took place on the floating gardens of Prime, under a sky that had returned to its perfect purple calm. Delegates from across the galaxy gathered to witness something that had never happened before. A species was about to receive the highest honor in galactic agriculture. Ambassador Trill stood at the ceremonial podium, holding the Golden Harvest Trophy. It was a beautiful object, a crystal flower that seemed to contain captured starlight. For 200 cycles, it had been held by the collective. Now it would travel to a small blue planet that most species were afraid to visit. The Galactic Agricultural Council hereby awards the Golden Harvest to the human delegation from Earth, Trill announced, for demonstrating exceptional resilience, adaptability, and agricultural wisdom under extraordinary conditions. The applause was not immediate. Many delegates still struggled with what they had witnessed, but it came, slowly at first, then building. By the time walked forward to accept the trophy, the entire hall was celebrating. She held the crystal flower carefully. It was lighter than she expected. She thought of her grandmother, who had never traveled beyond Earth, who had spent her entire life fighting storms and growing tangerines. She wished the old woman could see this moment. Thank you, said simply, but we did not win this award. Our ancestors did. Every farmer who ever planted a seed in difficult soil, every family that ever rebuilt after a disaster, every generation that refused to give up. This belongs to all of them. Stood beside her, tears rolling down his weathered face. He was not ashamed of crying. Farmers understood that water was life, even water from the eyes. Smiled and put his arm around his sister. They had done what they came to do. They had shown the galaxy what humans were capable of. But the ceremony was not the end. It was only the beginning. 3 days later, Ambassador Trill requested a private meeting with the human delegation. They met in her office, a beautiful space filled with plants from dozens of worlds. None of them were growing in soil. I have a proposal, Trill said. The Council has been studying the effects of the storm. We have been analyzing our vulnerabilities, and we have realized something uncomfortable. She activated a holographic map of the galaxy. Hundreds of points of light appeared, colony worlds, research stations, agricultural settlements. These are worlds that the Council has classified as non-viable for agriculture. Difficult climates, unstable weather patterns, challenging terrain. We have abandoned them or never attempted to develop them. But looking at what you achieved on that rocky hillside. She highlighted 17 points on the map. These worlds are dying. Their populations depend on food imports. Their supply lines are vulnerable. One disruption, one storm, one shipping delay, one political conflict, and millions of beings could starve. Studied the map. She saw volcanic worlds, worlds with extreme temperature variations, worlds with unpredictable precipitation, worlds that looked frighteningly familiar. "You want us to help," she said. "I want you to teach," Trill corrected. "The Council has never encountered a species like yours. You see opportunities where we see obstacles. You see farms where we see wastelands. Would you be willing to share that vision?" The humans looked at each other. This was bigger than any award. This was a chance to change the galaxy. "Yes," said, "we would be honored." Within 1 year, human agricultural advisors were deployed to all 17 worlds. They brought seeds from Earth, hardy varieties that had survived ice ages and droughts, and every disaster nature could produce. They brought tools and techniques that had been perfected over thousands of years. But most importantly, they brought a different way of seeing the universe. On III, a volcanic world with constant ash fall, a human team taught the local population how to enrich the soil with organic matter. Within 2 seasons, the planet was producing its own food for the first time in centuries. On a cold world with violent seasonal storms, humans introduced terraced farming techniques. The local species, tall, gentle beings who had always feared their own weather, learned to work with the storms instead of hiding from them. They called their human teacher Storm Friend. Personally traveled to 7 worlds. He was 70 years old by then, too old for such journeys according to his doctors. He went anyway. On each world, he knelt in the soil and taught farmers what his grandfather had taught him. He showed them how to read the land, how to trust the earth, how to fall down and stand up again. He died on the 8th world peacefully in a field he had just helped plant. The local farmers buried him there, in soil he had taught them to love. They built a small monument with words in both their language and Korean. He taught us that the universe is not our enemy, it is our teacher. Continued his genetic research. He collected samples from across the galaxy, studying how different species had adapted to different worlds. He discovered that the genetic diversity of Earth crops was unmatched, a library of survival strategies that could help feed countless civilizations. He established the Park Institute for Agricultural Genetics, named after his family. Students from dozens of species came to study there. They learned to see plants not as products but as partners, not as things to control but as beings to collaborate with. Became one of the Institute's first graduates. The fungal being who had once been terrified of sunlight now worked in open fields, helping to develop new varieties of cave moss that could survive in brighter conditions. He never forgot the day had offered him seeds and taught him to trust the chaos. First cultivator retired from competition permanently, but she did not disappear. She spent her remaining years studying human agricultural methods, trying to understand what she had missed in 200 cycles of victory. She wrote a famous paper titled The Wisdom of Imperfection that changed how they approached farming forever. And on Earth, on a small volcanic island called, the Park Family Farm continued to operate. It was declared a heritage site of galactic agricultural significance, the first such designation for a location. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see the tangerine orchards, to walk the terraced fields, to understand how such beauty could come from such struggle. returned home after 5 years of traveling the galaxy. She was older now, with gray in her hair and new lines on her face. She walked through the orchards her grandmother had planted, touching bark that had survived 100 storms. In the farmhouse, she hung the golden harvest trophy on the wall. It looked strange there, surrounded by simple wooden frames holding pictures of generations of park farmers. Her grandmother smiled from an old photograph, standing knee-deep in a flooded field after a typhoon, already planning how to rebuild. Smiled back. The galaxy had learned what humans had always known. The universe was not safe. The universe was not controllable. The universe was wild and dangerous and full of storms. But that was exactly what made it beautiful. And that was exactly why it was worth fighting for. Outside, the wind picked up. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Another typhoon was coming. Walked outside, breathed in the smell of rain on volcanic soil, and began to prepare. There was always more work to do. There were always more storms to survive. And there would always be humans ready to stand up and keep farming. That was the true golden harvest. Not crops, not trophies, not recognition. Just the endless, stubborn, beautiful determination to grow things in a universe that never stopped testing them. And winning anyway.